The subcommittee will come to order. We will be meeting today to consider 10 energy bills. And I recognize myself for 5 minutes for an opening statement. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's markup on 10 bills covering areas of energy efficiency, workforce development, and cyber security. Before we begin, I would like to commend all of the sponsors and co-sponsors for all of their hard work in introducing each of these bills. Most of the bills we will be considering today enjoy bipartisan support, and we would like to forward these bills to the full committee with full bipartisan support. And we want to continue to work with the minority to resolve any issues in hopes that we can come to a full agreement on each of these bills by the time we reach a full committee markup. I strongly believe that each of these bills that's before us this morning will help to strengthen the economy and combat climate change, while also putting consumers first by investing in a skilled, diverse energy workforce and protecting the nation's electric grid and pipeline infrastructure. On the energy efficiency side, we have bills that would reauthorize the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant Program and the Weatherization Assistance Program. Additionally, we will be marking up legislation to reauthorize grants for improving the energy efficiency of public buildings, as well as a bill that will establish a smart energy and water efficiency management program. In addition, we will mark up legislation that will establish an initiative to implement smart building technology in federal agencies while demonstrating policies and best practices for transitioning to smart buildings under the umbrella of DOE's Better Buildings Challenge. We will also be marking up my workforce bill, H.R. 1315, which will establish a comprehensive nationwide program to improve the education and training for underserved and underrepresented groups in order to increase the number of skilled workers trained to work in energy-related industries, including manufacturing, engineering, construction, and retrofitting jobs. And I want to thank my friend, the Ranking Member Upton, and his entire staff for working with my office to strengthen the bill so that we can ultimately move it through this committee with bipartisan support. Finally, we will be marking up a series of cybersecurity bills that all enjoy overwhelming bipartisan support. Each of these cybersecurity bills will help to protect the nation's electric grid and pipeline infrastructure. And I want to thank Mr. Wahlberg for working with my office on H.R. 362, the Energy Emergency Leadership Act. This bill will create a new DOE Assistant Secretary position with jurisdiction over all energy emergency and security functions relating to energy supply infrastructure and cyber security. It is important that we bring each of these cyber security bills up through the subcommittee and the full committee as a way to protect our jurisdiction and bring them to the floor of the House without any interference from any other conniving committee that would seek to step on our turf. As our late chairman Dingell would say, we shall besiege the scoundrels while they sleep. With that, I yield back the remainder of my time and now recognize the ranking member of the subcommittee, Mr. Upton, for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks for cleaning up your language as well, because I know you meant something else. So as you said, today's markup is going to cover 10 bills. 6 of them address energy workforce and energy efficiency programs at DOE, and 4 address the department's energy, cybersecurity, and emergency preparedness. I am pleased to see that most of these bills reflect close bipartisan work, a hallmark of this subcommittee's successful policy-making practice in this Congress and in the past. The energy cybersecurity bills, for example, especially reflect that practice. We moved these 4 bills through the committee in the last Congress, and it remains critical that we keep working to get them through the House and the Senate, and then to the President's desk. We all know cybersecurity threats to our energy infrastructure are real, and they, in fact, are growing. As Secretary Perry has noted, the nation's top 100 pipelines alone supply nearly 84% of the nation's energy. Pipelines represent a critical part of North America's energy backbone. That is why a coordinated government approach to ensuring the safe and reliable flow of energy across the nation, led by the DOE, is absolutely essential. H.R. 370, which I introduced with Mr. Loebsack, seeks to make sure that that's going to happen. DOE's cybersecurity and emergency functions would also be improved by H.R. 362, which you introduced with Mr. Wahlberg, which strengthens DOE's emergency response capabilities. The 2 bills authored by Mr. Latta and Mr. McNerney also provide important additional DOE authority to support the electricity sector. And as you know, Mr. Chairman, we've done a lot of bipartisan work on energy workforce development. I'm pleased to learn the report that our staffs have been working together to iron out policy differences on your bill, H.R. 1315, and I look forward to more progress on that front before the full committee markup. 2 other bipartisan bills from last Congress, H.R. 2665, the Smart Energy and Water Efficiency Act, and H.R. 2044, the Smart Building Acceleration Act, is going to save energy in public buildings and encourage the adoption of innovative technologies to conserve water in communities across the country. The remaining 3 bills, to my knowledge, have not yet received bipartisan input or careful oversight and review, and will thus, in my view, require more work. H.R. 2088 alone authorizes $3.5 billion per year in new energy efficiency grant authority to DOE, an amount that surpasses the one-time funding by the Obama administration in the Recovery Act way back when. That's a lot of potential spending, and however well-intentioned, it does raise a number of concerns about whether that's the best way to expand energy efficiency or alternative fuel projects in communities. We should have taken, I think, a little bit more time before moving to this markup today. Having said that, I'm hopeful that we can find common ground on revisions to these bills before we go to full committee markup. I'm certainly, as always, willing to work with you and ask only that you respect our concerns about creating outsized authorizations, which may have unintended side effects and may detract from approaches that produce more cost-effective results. If you remain open to our working together, there's much that we can accomplish to advance sound policies and protect the taxpayer interests. And with that, I yield back the balance of my time.
Chair, thanks, the ranking member, and now recognizes Mr. Pallone, the chairman of the full committee, for 5 minutes. The chair is not here now. The chair now recognizes Mr. Peters. for 5. No opening statement? Is there? I recognize the ranking member of the full committee for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, appreciate that. This morning we begin the process of marking up legislation concerning the Department of Energy's program for energy efficiency, for energy workforce development, for energy cybersecurity, and for emergency response. All of these are important policy areas and deserve committee attention for the benefit of updating the Department of Energy's authorities to address current and emerging priorities for the nation. Most of the bills we'll consider were developed collaboratively, and we appreciate that, and over, frankly, a relatively long period of time. 7 of the 10 bills, in fact, originated in or traced back to our bipartisan work in the last Congress. These include the suite of bills from Chairman Rush, Subcommittee Republican Leader Upton, Mr. Wahlberg, Mr. Latta, Mr. McNerney, Mr. Loebsack, which enhance DOE's electric and energy infrastructure cybersecurity work and elevate its leadership to prepare for and respond to emergencies. This is really important work. The bills sponsored by Mr. Kinzinger, Mr. McNerney, and Mr. Welch to increase water systems efficiency and to accelerate implementation of smart building technology offer new ways to fill gaps in DOE programs. There's also a well-established effort to enhance DOE's work to support development of a 21st century energy and manufacturing workforce. And Mr. Rush, our chairman, has taken the pen on the latest version of this bill. And I'm encouraged by the ongoing collaboration among our staff in search of an agreement on the policy path forward, Mr. Chairman. And I look forward to working with you and your team on this effort. The common thread here is the bipartisan work on developing the policies reflected in the bills, which involve a careful look at what DOE priorities should be, at how to ensure these priorities are balanced against other agency missions. Over the last several years, in the committee's work on DOE modernization, we focused on returning the agency to its core missions to make sure the work it does actually achieves our policy goals. Whether cleaning up sites, protecting the Secretary's authority over nuclear weapons work, or streamlining decisions and enhancing capabilities to ensure a robust, safe, and secure future energy supply. It's all very important. Some of this work involves exploring ways to update decades-old policies to fit them to modern realities, or to see if there are more appropriate ways to expend taxpayer dollars. So our legislative efforts last year to upgrade the Strategic Petroleum Reserve reflect this thinking as well. Now, last week, Mr. Chairman, we heard from Secretary of Energy Perry about the amazing prospects of the agency's supercomputing capabilities and what that means for future energy security and improved health. Work like this at the department can challenge our assumptions about what's possible for future energy systems in America and, frankly, the world. And I think this fact should also encourage us to challenge our own assumptions about the policies we legislate in that space. Are there new and different ways to do what we've been doing? Are there better ways that help to unleash private innovation and private capital without burdening taxpayers? Are there better ways to expend taxpayer funds when the nation has limited federal resources? Well, next week, my majority colleagues plan a full committee hearing on various infrastructure spending across the committee's jurisdiction. A good portion of this involves energy-related infrastructure, including energy and efficiency programs like we're considering today. So we want to work together on this legislation. I hope we can move forward thoughtfully, explore all the options to ensure effective programs and reduce risk to taxpayers. These are well-meaning efforts to find future energy and efficiency solutions, but the ingredients for success will require we look closely at the proposals and at other options that may accomplish the same goals. We should not rush legislation that's not been carefully reviewed, and this principle applies to bills like the block grant bill we're reviewing today, as well as bills next week and in the future. So, Mr. Chairman, we have a lot of areas of mutual interest, and we can accomplish a lot if we take advantage of these bipartisan solutions and efforts. So, with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back the balance of my time.
The chair thanks the gentleman, and now the chair recognizes Mr. Pallone, the chairman of the full committee, for 5 minutes for an opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman Rush. Today, the subcommittee will mark up 10 bills that will make our country's energy infrastructure more efficient, help develop a diverse energy workforce, and enhance the security of our nation's energy infrastructure. Making the homes and buildings in our communities more energy efficient is incredibly important for several reasons. Efficiency work supports thousands of good-paying jobs at small businesses in every state. Moreover, weatherizing homes and greening our public buildings saves money and helps address climate change by reducing the amount of greenhouse gas pollution emitted into the air. To support these goals, the subcommittee is considering 5 bills to increase energy efficiency in communities around the country. The subcommittee will review 2 bills reauthorizing grant programs to assist states and local governments in making public infrastructure more energy efficient. Representatives Stanton and Veasey have introduced H.R. 2088, which reauthorizes and increases funding for the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant Program. This program provides funds to local communities for projects that conserve energy and reduce greenhouse gas pollution. When it was last funded in 2009, communities used the resources to purchase, among other things, zero-emission fleet vehicles, install LED streetlights, and invest in renewable energy resources. We'll also mark up H.R. 2119, introduced by Representative Kelly, which reauthorizes and increases funding for the Department of Energy grants to improve the efficiency of public buildings, which can save money for local communities and reduce carbon emissions. As we know, emerging technologies and smart buildings and water systems can also potentially yield significant energy savings. Representatives McNerney, Welch, and Kinzinger have bills before us today that focus on technology as a driver for increased energy efficiency, and I support their bipartisan efforts. DOE's Weatherization Assistance Program saves consumers money on their energy bills and creates thousands of local jobs in communities across the country. H.R. 2041, introduced by Representative Tonko, Chairman Rush, and Representative Capter, increases funding for the Weatherization Assistance Program to $350 million annually and modernizes the program. And next, we'll consider Chairman Rush's Blue Collar to Green Collar Jobs Development Act, which takes important steps to bridge the diversity gaps that currently exist in the energy sector. The bill establishes a comprehensive nationwide program at DOE to improve education and training for jobs in energy-related industries. The legislation provides DOE new authority to offer direct assistance to schools, workforce development boards, and labor organizations. And the bill also establishes a grant program to provide funds to businesses to pay employees who are receiving training to work in the renewable energy, energy efficiency, or grid modernization sectors. And finally, the subcommittee will consider 4 bipartisan energy cybersecurity bills. That's Representatives Latta and McNerney's bill, H.R. 360, the Cyber Sense Act of 2019, which requires the Secretary to establish a voluntary program to identify cyber-secure products that could be used in the bulk power system. Mr. McNerney and Mr. Latta also introduced H.R. 359, the Enhancing Grid Security Through Public-Private Partnerships Act, which directs the Secretary of Energy to create and implement a program to enhance the physical and cybersecurity of electric utilities. And then we have H.R. 362, the Energy Emergency Leadership Act, sponsored by Chairman Rush and Representative Wahlberg, which creates a new DOE Assistant Secretary position with jurisdiction over all energy, emergency, and security functions related to energy supply, infrastructure, and cybersecurity. And H.R. 370, the Pipeline and LNG Facility Cybersecurity Preparedness Act, introduced by Ranking Member Upton and Representative Loebsack. It would require the Secretary to carry out a program to establish policies and procedures that would improve the physical and cybersecurity of natural gas transmission and distribution pipelines, hazardous liquid pipelines, and liquefied natural gas facilities. This is a modest but critically important bill to ensure secure, reliable energy delivery. Now, the committee reported all 4 bills by voice vote last Congress. That's the cyber security bills. We have, in my opinion, 10 strong bills before us today. I would urge all my colleagues to support them. Obviously, they're bipartisan. That's so important if we're moving forward. And I look forward to working with members on both sides as we continue to act and move towards full committee. So thank you again, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
I want to thank the chairman. There are members seeking recognition for an opening statement on the Democratic side. On the Republican side, seeing none, I believe that our opening statements have concluded, and pursuant to committee rules, members' written opening statements shall be made part of the record. Please submit written opening statements to the clerk's desk. We will now begin bill consideration. The chair calls up H.R. 2088, a bill to amend the Energy Independence and Security Act of 2007 to reauthorize the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant Program. The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 2088, a bill to amend the Energy Independence and Security Act of 2007 to reauthorize the energy efficiency and conservation
Without
block grants,
objection.
programs, and further purposes.
The first reading of the bill will be dispensed with. The bill is now considered as read. Without objection, the bill is considered as read and open for amendments at any point. The chair will now recognize Mr. Veasey to offer a manager's amendment.
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
What is your amendment label?
We have it, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman,
The chair will report the amendment.
Mr. Chairman,
Amendment to H.R. 2088.
I'd like to reserve a point of order.
Flores.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Reserves a point of order.
All right. Mr. Flores reserves a point of order. Mr. Veasey, without objection, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
I want to thank Chairman Rush and the committee for holding this very important markup today. My amendment would make technical changes clarifying the period of authorization and clarifying issues related to the Department of Energy administrative costs for this very important bill. As we saw during the legislative hearing last month, expanding energy efficiency is an incredibly important piece to fight and lessen our dependence on fossil fuels and reduce emissions. I'm proud to offer a bill, along with my colleague Greg Stanton of Arizona, to help municipalities achieve their goals of lessening their carbon footprint. The Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Program was authorized as part of the Energy Independence and Security Act of 2007 and later funded as part of the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act of 2009. The program, which my legislation would reauthorize, provided grants and technical assistance to local governments, states, and territories to support a wide variety of energy efficiency and renewable energy activities. These included energy audits, deployment of energy-efficient technologies, and anti-vehicle idling initiatives. In the district that I represent in the city of Dallas, they were able to use grant money to finance energy efficiency improvements of 248 city-owned buildings, totaling 3.3 million square feet. This resulted in more than $1 million a year in lowered energy costs for the city. The city of Dallas then parlayed those newly freed up funds into other infrastructure projects, such as working with the local utility to conduct additional energy audits in high-traffic buildings like fire stations, libraries, parks, police substations, recreation centers, to determine where to focus future retrofit activities. I'm very proud of the North Texas community and Dallas. And again, these stories were not just unique to North Texas and cities like Dallas. According to a study by the Oak Ridge National Laboratory, the program's activities generated thousands of kilowatts from on-site renewable projects, produced a net total job gain of 62,000 job years, and avoided 25.7 million metric tons worth of carbon from being emitted due to energy savings and renewable generation. The bipartisan appeal of the ECBG program has been clear since its inception when it was first authorized in 2007 under the Bush administration and later funded in 2009 under the Obama administrations. I have received letters of support from both Democratic and Republican mayors in Texas. Mayors and municipality seats run nonpartisan in the state of Texas, but people are Democrats or Republicans. Like Mayor Mike Rollins is a Democrat, but Jeff Williams over in Arlington, Texas, who's also very supportive of this, is a Republican. As my colleagues can see, this bill has garnered support from across the political spectrum, and I hope y'all will join me in advancing it today. Mr. Chairman, I reserve the balance of my time. Thank you.
Chair, thanks, gentlemen. Is there any members on either side of the aisle?
Speak to the point of order.
Chairman.
You want to speak on the amendment?
Yes,
All right,
speak on my reservation. There are two concerns that I have with the bill. The first one is $3.5 billion per year of funding. And secondly, the lack of information to justify that block grants are the best policy approach to achieve the goals of the bill without duplicating other federal, local, or private initiatives. Other than a single legislative hearing on April 10th, there's been no committee evaluation of the program and no assessment of alternative approaches. We don't fully understand whether or not it would be duplicative of other programs or that it would be executed in a way that protects the taxpayer. The only time the program was funded, again, the only time the program was funded in the last 12 years was under President Obama's 2009 stimulus spending bill. That stimulus bill provided one-time funding of $3.2 billion over 3 years, and it was not fully expended. Both the GAO and the DOE Inspector General at the time of the program raised questions about the fiscal management and whether funds achieved what was promised in some cases. We should look closely at this information before moving forward with this bill. Would this program duplicate other programs? How does this bill interface with DOE's Better Buildings Initiative or its Clean Cities program? These are questions that need to be answered. The bill explicitly expands the eligibility of state, local, and tribal entities to fund new alternative fuel infrastructure, including for electricity. We've got to ask, what are the barriers to that infrastructure now? Are there also permitting barriers that exist that prevent that? There's no strong bipartisan support. Excuse me, let me rephrase that. There's no strong bipartisan agreement on deploying new infrastructure, but I'm confident, let me rephrase that. There is strong bipartisan agreement on deploying new infrastructure, but I'm not confident that this program adequately addresses that. There may be value to resurrecting this expired program, but we need to take a closer look before we leap to an authorization at this level. So I would propose that my colleagues work with us across the aisle, across both aisles, to explore other areas of consensus on this program. As it is, without better information, I can't support the bill and would urge a no vote unless these concerns are addressed adequately before a full committee markup. That said, I will withdraw my point of order. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
The chair now recognizes Mr. Palone for 5 minutes on the manager's amendment.
Thank you. I just want to respond, if I could, to some of the comments that were just made. You know, there was a GAO report. I know that that was just brought up, the GAO report from April 2011 on the Recovery Act. But, I mean, I thought that, reading the GAO report, it, had some good takeaways and lessons learned, and it certainly does not invalidate the importance of the program. I mean, the report found some, I guess, pain points or whatever in the administration, but the main thing was that the application and reporting processes were cumbersome because there was a lot of requirements, and that's why some of the money probably wasn't expended, because it was difficult to apply for. And you talk about state and local governments, it's often a challenge for them to, they don't necessarily have the people and the expertise to fit into these requirements that we put in place. But I mean, the GAO report did show that the program was actually worthwhile. It just basically made some recommendations in terms of streamlining the application process the next time around. And I think that will be helpful in administering the block grant. The main thing that I wanted to say, though, is that, I had direct experience with this with some of my towns. And a few weeks ago, I went to Piscataway, which is one of my communities that actually did receive funding from this block grant back in 2011. And just as an example of what they did, I mean, basically they retrofitted all their public works buildings and put solar panels on top. And they have saved a tremendous amount of money by doing that. And the mayor of Piscataway is very much involved in the National Conference of Mayors, and the National Conference of Mayors, which was here a few weeks ago, endorsed this block grant, asked that it be reauthorized based on the prior experience. And that was very bipartisan, both Democratic and Republican mayors. Because as you know, when you talk about energy efficiency or addressing climate change and moving towards renewables like solar, it really isn't a partisan issue. and particularly at a local level. I have a lot of Republican mayors in Republican towns, and they're very much supportive of this and a lot of our initiatives. In fact, you know, because the president has insisted on wanting to withdraw from the Paris Agreement and basically, you know, sabotaging a lot of efforts that would achieve the goals of the Paris Agreement, what we've seen is that state and local governments are the ones truly at the forefront of addressing the climate crisis, and they're stepping up to the plate to fill the vacuum left by the president's lack of leadership. So there's 1,000 mayors that have signed on to the climate protection agreements to follow the requirements of the Kyoto Protocol. There are 400 cities and counties who've signed the We Are Still In declaration, making commitments to reach the Paris Accord requirements. And I just think that regardless of whether you agree with Paris or not, or regardless of whether you even believe that climate change is human-induced, there's no reason in the world not to try to encourage energy efficiency, move towards you know, things like retrofitting with solar panels and moving towards you know, trying to increase wind power and other renewables. And that's really what we're trying to do here. I don't think this is a partisan issue. I do think there's ample precedent for saying that this block grant is a good program, and it certainly helps our towns on a bipartisan basis try to fulfill the goal of more energy efficiency and movement towards renewables. So I hope we can all, as much as possible, be supportive on a bipartisan level. Thank
The
you.
gentleman yield?
Yeah, of course.
And I just want to say from our perspective on this side, we had a couple concerns. One was that we hadn't really done as a subcommittee an assessment of the approach, but it really comes down to cost. President Obama's major big program, stimulus program 12 years ago, he asked for in essence, about $3.5 billion over 3 years. So about $1 billion, a little bit over $1 billion a year. This is $3.5 billion each year. And President Obama's request of that 3.5, they never spent $500 million of that 3.5. So our concern over here is the cost number. Hopefully we can work on this between now and full committee. We're prepared to let the bill go on a voice vote, but I just wanted to make that point. Yield back. Thank you.
Chair, thanks, Mr. Paloma, for yielding back. Is there any other member who desire to speak on the manager's amendment? Seeing none, we will proceed to roll call. Voice vote on the bill. All in favor of the bill will signify by saying aye. All those who oppose will signify by saying no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the bill is agreed to. Are there any further amendments to this legislation? Seeing none, the question now occurs on forwarding H.R. 2088 as amended to the full committee. All those in favor of forwarding H.R. 2088 as amendment to the full committee will signify by saying aye. All those opposed will signify by saying no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the bill will be 2088 as amended is forwarded to the full committee. The chair now calls up H.R. 2041, the Weatherization Enhancement and Local Energy Efficiency Investment and Accountability Act, and the clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 2041, to reauthorize the Weatherization Assistance Program and for other purposes.
Without objection, the first reading of the bill will be dispensed with. The bill is now considered as read. Without objection, the bill is considered as read and open for amendment at any point. Are there any members seeking to speak on the underlying bill?
Chairman.
For what purpose did the gentleman from New York?
Mr. Chairman, I move to strike the last word.
The chair recognizes the gentleman for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We thank you for holding today's markup. In 2041, reauthorizes and modernizes the DOE Weatherization Assistance Program. For over 40 years, this program has helped more than 7.4 million low-income households make their homes safer, healthier, and certainly more energy efficient. We all know the importance of energy efficiency, and the investments can pay for themselves over time. This program recognizes, however, that low-income households cannot afford those upfront costs. So it enables them to improve their outcome and get the assistance up front. WAP makes small but meaningful investments to get these homes in better condition. I believe it's the Department of Energy's estimate that an average annual cost savings per household is at around $283. The program works according to a review by Oak Ridge National Lab. Each weatherization program dollar delivers $4.50 in benefits, including energy savings and improved health and safety. The program was reauthorized back in 2007 with bipartisan support. It expired in 2012 with a funding level of some $1.4 billion. In reality, we have never been anywhere close to sustained funding at those levels. This bill right-sizes the authorization at $350 million through 2024. The bill also makes it easier to incorporate advanced technologies and new materials in weatherization services. It would allow homes to be re-weatherized after 15 years and establishes a small set-aside for a competitive grant program that would encourage greater innovation in weatherization services, along with a few other changes based on extensive stakeholder feedback. All existing Weatherization Assistance Program grantees and subgrantees, as well as other nonprofits, would be eligible to compete for that funding. We have a responsibility, I believe, to re-examine expired authorizations under our jurisdiction. And the evidence is clear that this program is successful, but it can also be modernized in small ways to ensure weatherization is keeping up with technology development and utilizing the latest techniques and best practices. And hopefully these changes will spur even more innovation in weatherization delivery. For the past few months, we have been discussing what types of clean energy bills we can all come together to support. This is a great place to start. I believe it promotes efficiency. It has a proven track record of helping the most vulnerable Americans, all while incorporating the latest techniques and best practices. So I hope my colleagues will support this bill. And with that, Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Are there any other members seeking recognition?
Mr. Chairman, ask to strike the last word.
The chair now recognizes the gentleman, the ranking member, Mr. Upton, for 5 minutes.
So, Mr. Chairman, like the last program, energy efficiency and conservation block grant reauthorizations, I think most of us, certainly I have, a long record in support of Weatherization Assistance Program through LIHEAP. And we've had a number of votes almost every year on the House floor, and it has been a bipartisan proposal with industry and others, particularly the most vulnerable, that have supported that. Our concern, again, on this side, and tend to see this likely passed by voice vote as well here in the subcommittee, is the additional cost. It's my understanding that it's about a $100 million increase in spending for the program, so it goes up almost a third over what it was before. So if you take this with the other authorizations, we're looking at about a $4 billion increase in new authorizations for DOE. Fully funded, that's going to more than double the Office of Energy Efficiency program. So I think that's what we're concerned about. I don't think we should lose sight of the important energy security, cyber security work that the department has to do to protect all Americans, and we do want those programs in place to distract from that important work. So with that, I would just again raise the question of the increased authorization level and yield back.
The gentleman yields back. Is there any other members seeking recognition? The chair recognizes himself for 5 minutes. As a co-sponsor to H.R. 2041, I strongly support this bill. And I want to thank Mr. Tonko for his hard work and leadership on this important piece of legislation. As we have discussed previously, the bill will reauthorize DOE Weatherization Assistance Program at $350 million per year from 2020 to 2024. The bill will also establish a competitive grant program to support innovation in weatherization assistance. We all know that the return on investment with this program is overwhelming. According to DOE, for every $1 invested in weatherization, $1.72 is generated in energy benefits, and another $2.78 is generated in non-energy benefits. My own constituents in the great city of Chicago, the Windy City, rely heavily on assistance from this program. And according to DOE, the average household saves $283 or more every year through weatherization upgrades. The Weatherization Assistance Program supports over 8,500 jobs and provides weatherization services to approximately 35,000 35,000 homes every year. And as we move forward to full committee markup, I will be offering an amendment to further strengthen this program by prioritizing awarding grants to entities that train local underrepresented groups such as the ones targeted in my workforce bill. And we want to make sure that all Americans are given an opportunity to train and work in energy efficiency and retrofitting sectors where they can make a difference in not only their own community, but they can learn a trade that can help them realize their own piece of the American dream. And this bill has historically always been enjoyed widespread bipartisan support. So I urge all of my colleagues to support this bill. With that, I yield back the balance of my time. Are there any other members seeking time? The question now occurs on forwarding H.R. 2041 to the full committee. All those in favor of forwarding the bill H.R. 2041 to the full committee will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed will signify by saying no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the bill is forwarded to the full committee. The chair now calls up H.R. 2119, a bill to amend the Energy Policy Act of 2000 to reauthorize grants for improving energy efficiency of public buildings, and the clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 2119, a bill to amend the Energy Policy Act of 2005 to reauthorize grants for improving the energy efficiency of public buildings and for other purposes.
Without objection, the first reading of the bill is dispensed with. The bill is now considered as read. The chair now recognizes my colleague from the great city of Chicago, Ms. Kelly, for 5 minutes on the bill.
Mr. Chairman, I move to strike the last word. My bill, H.R. 2119, before the subcommittee today is an important but small step in our overall efforts to reduce energy utilization, protect our planet, and save taxpayer dollars. This bill does all three things in a simple, common-sense way that will help make the federal government a leader in green building technologies and application. As we work to combat climate change, reduce the dangerous amount of carbon dioxide in our air, and protect our kids from asthma and other environmentally caused health complications, the government should lead the way with energy-efficient buildings. Additionally, investing in energy efficiency reduces the long-term costs to American taxpayers by saving energy and reducing the operational and maintenance costs associated with operating the building. Just like a family will insulate walls and windows to save money in the winter, the government should be doing the exact same thing because it works, because it saves money, and because it's green. I look forward to working with the Minority Ranking Member Walden and Subcommittee Ranking Member Upton to build bipartisan support for this common sense bill that will make strategic investment in green building that will save taxpayer dollars in the short, medium, and long term. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Are there any other? For what purposes does the gentleman for Ohio seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I move to strike the last word.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, energy efficiency is important. It's a useful part of our energy toolkit that can provide many benefits for energy consumers, ratepayers, and our electric grid. And we do need to continue promoting it where it makes sense, especially by looking at ways to improve active and effective programs and efforts. I think some of the work we're debating today fits into that category. As we know, H.R. 2119 reauthorizes an expired program from the Energy Policy Act of 2005 that, and this is an important distinction, has never been funded before. It has not been used through 3 administrations. The Department of Energy confirmed to staff that this has never received funding, and we find no evidence that a past administration even asked for funding. Beyond reauthorizing an unused program, this bill increases the authorization level from the initial $30 million per year to $100 million per year for 5 years. So I wonder how this program would work with and be complementary to other active energy efficiency support programs at the department and at other agencies like Housing and Urban Development. And I'd like to better understand that. That said, I'm open to working with my colleague to find consensus on this bill, but as it is, I can't support it, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. Are there any members on the Democratic side seeking? All right. You want a voice vote on this? All right. I want to just tell the gentleman from Ohio that we are really will enjoy working with you and with the ranking member and all of our Republican colleagues to reach agreement on funding levels for this bill and H.R. 2088 before the full committee markup consideration. So we're happy to work with you.
If the gentleman will yield, I welcome that work and look forward to it. And thank you for that commitment. Yield back.
Thank the gentleman for yielding back. Then the chair, we have before us now a vote on the bill. Are there? All right. The bill 2119 is before the full committee, and we I think now we will vote on the bill 2119. All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No? The ayes have it, the ayes have it. The bill will be forwarded to the full committee. The chair will now call up the bill H.R. 1315, the Blue Collar to Green Collar Jobs Development Act of 2019, and the clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 1315, a bill to amend Title II of the Department of Energy Organization Act to reauthorize an office within the Department of Energy to direct the Secretary of Energy to establish and carry out a comprehensive nationwide energy-related industries job program and for other purposes.
Dispense with. The bill is now considered as read. Without objection, the bill is considered as read and open for amendments at any time. The chair will recognize himself for 5 minutes on the bill. I want to begin by thanking Ranking Member Upton and his great staff for working with my great staff on H.R. 1315. Both sides have been holding good faith negotiations, and I believe that we are close to coming to an agreement on this bill. Just last week, we heard from Secretary Perry, who also reiterated the importance of investing federal dollars in a program to train underrepresented groups to work in energy-related industries. It is my hope and my expectation that once we hear back from DOE on the funding levels that the agency currently spends on workforce programs, we will be able to come to an agreement on the authorization amount that both sides can accept. The bill is supported by a wide coalition of groups from all across the nation, ranging from the American Association of Blacks in Energy, the Solar Energy Industry Association, the Alliance to Save Energy, Duke Energy, and the Building Performance Industry, and Exelon, just to name a few of the many. All of us understand the need for a bill like this, which helps the industry, helps our communities, and helps the overall economy. So I look forward to continuing to work with Ranking Member Upton and the minority side to iron out any remaining differences so that we can once again move forward and with an overwhelming bipartisan bill that can soon become law. Are there any other members seeking recognition? I yield back my time.
Mr. Chairman, if you strike the last word, I just might say that as I've known you for a lot of years, you are known for this issue. This is a legacy issue for you, and we all deeply respect that. You've worked very hard on this forever and a day. I agree with you that workforce development in energy sectors is a very important and critical issue that we should be supporting and, frankly, be promoting as well. And as you know, we've had strong bipartisan legislation on this issue for the last number of Congresses. Those bills were widely supported, and they passed on suspension on the House floor by better than a 2/3 vote. And I know that we can find a similar path forward on this bill, H.R. 1315. And with that goal in mind, Mr. Chairman, our staffs, great staffs, as you indicated, they've been discussing ways to improve the legislation that in fact would make it more inclusive when it comes to the groups that it benefits and the forms of energy that it supports, as well as more fiscally aligned with current DOE budgets for similar workforce programs. So our staff has accomplished much on that front in the last couple of weeks, but there is still more to do. So we're not in a position to support the bill in its current form today, but I am hopeful and I know that we can get to a better place because we do want to support this bill, which will garner more support not only from me, but colleagues on both sides of the aisle and of the dais as this legislation would move forward. So thank you again for your tireless and sustained efforts on the issue. for your willingness to reach across the aisle and work in a bipartisan basis. With that, I yield back.
Yields back. Are there any other members seeking recognition? Seeing none, the question now occurs on H.R. 1315 and forwarding this bill, H.R. 1315, to the full committee. All those in favor of forwarding H.R. 1315 to the full committee will signify by saying aye. All those opposed will signify by saying no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The ayes have it. H.R. 1315 is now forwarded to the full committee. The chair now calls up H.R. 2665, the Smart Energy and Water Efficiency Act, and the clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 2665, a bill to direct the Secretary of Energy to establish a smart energy and water efficiency program.
Without objection, the first reading of the bill will be dispensed with. The bill is now considered as read. Are there any members seeking recognition to speak on the underlying bill?
Chairman.
The chair now recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Kennedy, for what purposes?
Mr. Chairman, I move to strike the last word.
All right. The chair now recognizes the gentleman for 5 minutes.
I thank the chairman, and I also thank my friend and colleague, Mr. Kissinger, for co-sponsoring and co-leading this bill. The H.R. 2665, the Smart Energy and Water Efficiency Act of 2019. I had introduced this bill as a part of my West Act in the 115th Congress. This bill is a comprehensive, this bill directs the Secretary of Energy to establish a smart energy and water efficiency management pilot program to award grants to eligible entities that demonstrate advanced and innovative technology-based solutions to improve energy and water efficiency. We can do more on the energy-water nexus, and this helps innovative technology to have the funding to prove their efficacy. I look forward to moving this and other measures that focus on conservation, recycling, water use, stormwater capture, and other new approaches that help make our communities better stewards of our environment and more resilient to climate change. I'll note that before the hearing, Mr. Griffith, my colleague, approached me about a way to improve this bill, and I'll be looking forward to working with him on that in the future before this goes to the full committee, and I yield back. I'll yield to the
Gentleman yield. I just want to thank you for working with us on this. I know that Mr. Kinzinger, who's your co-author on a bipartisan basis, strongly supports this. He's unfortunately at another hearing, which is why he's not here today, but he asked me to speak in support of the bill, and we strongly support it and appreciate your efforts and yield back.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back.
Chair, thanks, gentlemen. Are there any other members seeking recognition? The question now occurs on forwarding H.R. 2665 to the full committee. All those in favor of saying aye?
Aye.
All those in favor, all those opposed? The ayes have it, the ayes have it. The bill is forwarded to the full committee. The chair now calls up H.R. 2044, the Smart Building Acceleration Act, and the clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 2044, a bill to accelerate smart building development and for other purposes.
Without objection, the first reading of the bill will be dismissed. The bill is now considered as read. Are there any members seeking recognition to speak on the underlying bill? All right. Seeing none, the chair now call for The question now occurs on forwarding H.R. 2044 to the full committee. All those in favor of forwarding the bill to the full committee will signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed to the bill signify by saying no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The chair now calls up H.R. 359, the Enhancing Grid Security through Public-Private Partnership Acts, and the clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 359, a bill to provide for certain programs and developments in the Department of Energy concerning the cybersecurity and vulnerability of and physical threats to the electric grid and for other purposes.
Without objection, the first reading of the bill will be dismissed with. The bill is now considered as read. Without objection, the bill is considered as read and open for amendments at any time. Are there any members seeking recognition to speak on the underlying bill?
Mr. Chairman.
All right. For what purposes does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I move to strike the last word.
All right, the gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank my good friend, Mr. Latta, for co-sponsoring this bill, which creates a program to enhance physical and cyber security of electric utilities through accessing security vulnerabilities, increased cybersecurity training, and data collection. It would also require the interrupt cost estimate calculator, which is used to calculate the return on investment on utility investments, to be updated at least every 2 years to ensure accurate calculations. As co-chairs of the Grid Innovation Caucus, Congressman Latta and I are focused on providing a forum that advocates for grid investment and examines the risks and opportunities with the grid. I'm more than delighted to invite members of this committee and other interested stakeholders to our Grid Innovation and Infrastructure Expo this upcoming Tuesday, May 21st, in the Rayburn foyer from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. It is a wide variety of electric companies and manufacturers that are deploying smart energy infrastructure, such as energy storage, microgrids, and advanced metering infrastructure. Please join us, and I will yield back.
The gentleman yields back. Are there any other?
Mr. Chairman.
For what purpose is the gentleman from Ohio?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Move to strike the last word.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you much, Mr. Chairman. I rise in support of H.R. 359, bill sponsored by my friend, the gentleman from California, Mr. McNerney, Enhancing Grid Security through Public-Private Partnerships Act. As co-chairs of the Grid Innovation Caucus, we have partnered to provide a forum for discussing solutions to the many challenges facing the grid and to educate members of Congress and staff about the importance of the grid with relation to the economy, energy security, and advanced technologies being utilized to enhance grid capabilities. This legislation would direct DOE to facilitate and encourage public-private partnerships in order to improve cybersecurity of electric utilities. This bill will foster a collaborative relationship between DOE and the utilities to ensure that our grid becomes increasingly resilient in the face of cyber attacks. This legislation is important because as technology continues to advance, new risks emerge and vulnerabilities are exposed. We continue to read about attempts by foreign actors to infiltrate our nation's energy systems, and this legislation is another step forward toward mitigation and protection of our energy infrastructure. I'm proud of our bipartisan work on this legislation, Mr. Chairman. I thank my friend from California, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Is there any other member? The chair, for what purposes does the chair of the full committee, Mr. Palone?
Strike the last word in support of the next 4 bills, actually.
The chair recognizes the gentleman for 5 minutes.
Thank you. And I want to just talk about the 4 cyber bills that are coming up now. They deal with the cyber and physical security of our energy infrastructure. And I just wanted to say a few words about the importance of these 4 bills and the committee's work over the past 2 Congresses. Each one of these is completely nonpartisan or bipartisan. In fact, every one of them was written and reported by our committee on a completely bipartisan consensus basis during the last Congress, and they all represent important, reasonable, and prudent steps we can take to protect our energy infrastructure. I want to thank the bill sponsors, and particularly the ranking members of Walden and Upton, for their work on this legislation. Ranking Member Upton's legislation to address pipeline, cyber, and physical security is especially important, given that we learned in our recent pipeline safety and security hearing that the Transportation Security Administration, which has responsibility for pipeline security, devotes almost no resources to the task and refuses to even show up to explain themselves. In any event, it's important that we remain united on these bills, and I'm truly grateful for the support and assistance on these bills from members on both sides of the aisle. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Chair, thanks, gentlemen. The chair now recognizes, for what purposes of the gentleman from Vermont?
To strike the last word. Mr. Chairman, I've now learned what a good tactic is to get a bill passed. I'm not here when my bill comes up. So I appreciate you, Mr. Chairman, taking care of me. I was in the Intelligence Committee and got here just a little bit after the good news had arrived. But I did just want to, number one, thank you in the committee for the Smart Building Acceleration Act, which I co-sponsored with Representative Kinzinger. Thank the committee, and I look forward to working with the subcommittee and the whole committee to have that passed. But thanks so much for your aggressive work on energy efficiency, Mr. Chairman.
Well, Chair, thanks, gentlemen, and I didn't know what you were going to say. I thought you wanted us to reconsider passing the bill.
I'm slow, but not stupid.
All right. The question now occurs on forwarding H.R. 359 to the full committee. All those in favor of forwarding the bill H.R. 359 to the full committee will signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed will signify by saying no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and H.R. 359 is forwarded to the full committee. The chair now calls up H.R. 360, the Cyber Sense Act of 2019, and the clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 360, a bill to require the Secretary of Energy to establish a voluntary cyber sense program to test the cyber security of products and technology intended for use in
Without
bulk
objection,
power systems and for other
the first reading of the bill will be considered, will be dispensed with. The bill is now considered as read. Are there any members seeking recognition to speak on the underlying bill?
Mr. Chairman.
For what purposes does the gentleman from Ohio seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Move to strike the last word.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
I thank the chairman and ranking member for including this legislation in today's markup. H.R. 360 would direct the Secretary of Energy to establish a voluntary cybersense program to test the cybersecurity products and technologies intended for use in bulk power systems. The need for a strong defense of our nation's electric infrastructure has never been more clear. Again, as leaders of the Grid Innovation Caucus, my good friend, Mr. McNerney, and I have worked together to find the best ways we can increase the resiliency of our electric grid. Improving cooperation is key to ensuring the best information, products, and practices are being used to guard against cyber attacks, and these bills will foster a collaborative relationship between DOE and utilities that help accomplish this goal. Ensuring our energy infrastructure is safe, secure, and resilient is the issue of critical importance. Recent headlines illustrate why I've taken this seriously with documented efforts by state actors to hack our energy infrastructure. It's essential that we are more vigilant than ever about the technology that we use. At subcommittee hearings held in the 115th Congress, both Secretary Perry and the FERC commissioners expressed support for this policy as a way to help improve the grid's resiliency. Again, I would like to thank my friend, Mr. McNerney, for partnering on this legislation again in this Congress, and the Energy and Commerce team for helping us move this legislation forward. And again, I would also like to echo the gentleman's earlier statement in regards to the Grid Innovation Caucus Innovation Expo. on at the Rayburn Forum on May 21st, which is a Tuesday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. We hope you can all attend that. And Mr. Chairman, I'd like to thank you, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. Are there any other members seeking recognition to speak on the underlying bill?
Mr. Chairman.
For what purposes does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I move to strike the last word.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
I thank the chairman, and once again, I want to thank Mr. Latta for his leadership in this bill and in grid modernization and in security. As he mentioned, this bill protects our grid infrastructure by creating a program to test and verify products that are used in the bulk power system to be cyber secure. I also look forward to moving this important piece of legislation through the House, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Are there any other members seeking recognition on the underlying bill? The question now occurs on forwarding H.R. 360 to the full committee. All those in favor of forwarding the bill H.R. 360 to the full committee will signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed by saying no. In the opinion of the chairs, the ayes have it. The ayes have it, and the H.R. 360 is forwarded to the full committee. The chair now calls up H.R. 362, the Energy Emergency Leadership Act, and the clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 362, a bill to amend the Department of Energy Organization Act with respect to functions assigned to assistant secretaries and for other purposes.
Without objection, the first reading of the bill will be dismissed with. The bill is now considered as read. The chair will recognize himself to strike the last word for 5 minutes. As we call up these cyber security bills, I just want to take a moment to remind my colleagues that the purpose of bringing up these bills today is to exercise our committee's jurisdiction in order to protect it from other committees that are seeking to encroach on our territory. Each of these bills are bipartisan, and they will help secure and protect our nation's electric grid and pipeline infrastructure. As I mentioned in my opening statements, I want to commend Mr. Wahlberg for working with my office on H.R. 362, the Energy Emergency Leadership Act. The bill would simply create a new DOE Assistant Secretary position with jurisdiction over all energy, emergency, and security functions related to energy supply, infrastructure, and cyber security. The bill authorizes the new Assistant Secretary to provide, upon request of a state, local, or tribal government, to the DOE for technical assistance and support and response capabilities with respect to the energy security threats, risks, and incidents. It's for this reason and many others that I urge all of my colleagues to support this bill and each of the cyber security bills that are before us today, so we can send a strong signal that we are willing to protect our committee's jurisdiction, and we will stand united against any attempts to encroach on that jurisdiction from any other committee. Keep your greedy hands off of our jurisdiction. With that, I yield back the balance of my time.
Mr. Chairman, strike the last word.
Mr. Wahlberg is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate your spunk on that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for working with me on this bipartisan piece of legislation. As we all know, there's nothing more important than the security and integrity of our energy infrastructure. The bulk power system faces countless attacks every day, and protecting our grid from these threats to serve reliable, affordable electricity to consumers is something we take very seriously. Just last week, the North American Electric Reliability Corporation, or NERC, announced it will conduct a root cause analysis to determine what caused a utility to temporarily lose visibility into certain parts of its control system. While this may end up being the first cyber attack on the U.S. grid, the incident is a stark reminder that more has to be done to protect our electricity infrastructure. Secretary Perry has taken leadership by establishing the Office of Cybersecurity, Energy Security, and Emergency Response, CSER, at the department to spearhead these efforts. As a sector-specific agency responsible for the bulk power system, the Department of Energy must be empowered to deal with the attacks our utilities face on a daily basis. This office is critical for leading the interagency communication and response plans. However, as the agency's mission has evolved to meet these challenges, their work now exceeds their statutory authority. As such, we must codify this important function into the department's core mission and create a Senate-confirmed Assistant Secretary position. This will better position the Department of Energy to work with their interagency partners to coordinate, plan, and respond to energy emergencies. Last week, this subcommittee heard testimony from Secretary Perry confirming the need to elevate and authorize the functions assigned to the Assistant Secretary into the DOE organization chart. The Secretary stated that the work at CSER office is just as important as what the DoD does on keeping this country safe. The coming hurricane season provides yet another reminder that these core functions also include emergency response in addition to their cybersecurity functions. These functions are critical to making sure we get our energy systems back online after an emergency situation. I want to thank Chairman Rush for working on this legislation with me, and I look forward to working with my colleagues to resolve the remaining jurisdictional hurdles to enacting this bill into law. I urge my colleagues to vote yes, and I yield back.
The chair thanks the gentleman for yielding back. Are there any other members seeking recognition? The question now occurs on forwarding H.R. 362 to the full committee. All those in favor of forwarding the bill H.R. 362 to the full committee will signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed will signify by saying no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The bill H.R. 362 is forwarded to the full committee. The chair now calls up H.R. 370, the Pipeline and LNG Facility Cybersecurity Preparedness Act, and the clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 370, a bill to amend to require the Secretary of Energy to carry out a program relating to physical security and cybersecurity for pipelines and liquefied natural gas.
Without objection, the first reading of the bill will be dispensed with. The bill is now considered as read. Are there any members seeking recognition to speak on the underlying bill? The chair, for what purposes do the ranking member seek recognition?
Strike the last word.
The chair recognizes the ranking member for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill, H.R. 370, which I reintroduced this year with Mr. Loebsack, my good friend, is going to strengthen the Department of Energy's ability to respond to physical and cyber threats to our nation's pipelines as well as the LNG facilities. We know that Russian agents and other nation states are waging cyber war on our energy infrastructure. Yes, we do. And as the sector-specific agency for energy, DOE has to play and have a stronger lead role to protect our nation from these threats. To help address these threats, this bill does a number of things. It requires the Secretary to carry out a program to coordinate federal agencies, states, and the energy sector to ensure the security, resiliency, and survivability of natural gas pipelines, hazardous liquid pipelines, and liquefied natural gas facilities. It authorizes DOE to coordinate response and recovery to physical and cyber incidents impacting the energy sector and develop advanced cybersecurity applications and technologies. And it allows DOE to perform pilot demonstration projects and develop workforce development curricula relating to physical and cybersecurity to help the energy sector evaluate, prioritize, and improve physical and cybersecurity capabilities. This isn't a regulatory program. It simply strengthens DOE's role to coordinate cyber response, collaborate, and build capacity within states in the energy sector. Let's face it, if something bad happens, we don't ever want to be in the position of ruining the day that something here didn't move forward in a bipartisan basis. We never want to be in the position of saying, we're sorry, we didn't take action. This bill takes action. We need to get it across the plate, through the House, through the Senate, and to the President's desk. Yield back.
The gentleman yields back. For what purposes does the gentleman from Iowa seek recognition?
Strike the last word.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Rush and Ranking Member Upton, for your leadership on these issues, all of these bills today, really. I'm glad to see this committee working to advance legislation to improve our nation's energy efficiency and cybersecurity infrastructure. I'm very proud to speak on behalf of this legislation, this particular piece of legislation, the Pipeline and LNG Facility Cybersecurity Preparedness Act that I introduced with Ranking Member Upton. And I do thank my friend for his partnership on this issue and on this bill. This bill would strengthen DOE's role regarding coordination and information sharing with other federal agencies, states, and the energy sector to improve our nation's physical and cyber pipeline security. As we know, cyber attacks are a near constant and increasingly dangerous threat to our energy infrastructure. This legislation will be a step in the right direction, ensuring that we are prepared in both the public and private sectors to not only prevent, but also respond and recover quickly from physical and cyber incidents. This legislation also permits DOE to develop advanced cybersecurity technologies and establish workforce curricula to train the energy workforce in cyber and physical security. Very, very critical component of this legislation, I think. Our most advanced technologies are only as effective as the expertise of the workforce behind them. And this legislation will go a long way toward ensuring we have both the technology and the skilled workforce we need to counter threats to our pipelines and LNG facilities. It is absolutely critical that we make progress toward protecting our energy infrastructure from physical and cyber threats in order to ensure that our energy supply remains secure as well as continue to provide low energy costs to consumers. I'm pleased the committee is acting on this and other critical legislation for our nation's energy efficiency and cybersecurity. And I thank my friend, Mr. Upton, once again for introducing this bill. I'm happy to work with him on this, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. Are there any other members seeking recognition? The question now occurs on forwarding H.R. 370 to the full committee. All those in favor of forwarding the bill H.R. 370 to the full committee will signify by saying aye. All opposed will signify by saying no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. H.R. 370 is forwarded to the full committee. Without objection, the staff is authorized to make technical and conforming changes to the bills consistent with the actions taken by the committee today. And the committee now stands adjourned under the Rodney King principle. Can we all just get along? Thank you.
All right, good work. Is that it? Good work, my man. All right.
Yeah, I lost it.